Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Oh, that was great. I didn't have to say it twice. I was planning on saying it twice really loud. So how many of you danced last night? Yeah, either at the plenary, did anyone go to the late night dance deal? Yeah, some of you? Yeah. And how many of you were in this session yesterday watching the emerging leaders? Fantastic. Well, for those of you who missed yesterday's session, you are about to hear from the 2018 cohort of the Emerging Leaders Initiative, which is a joint venture between the Skoll Foundation and the MasterCard Foundation. And it aims to accelerate leadership development for the next generation of social entrepreneurs from around the world. And we are in our 5th year of doing this. It started as a pilot, and it just blossomed like a rose. So each year we designed a tailored learning experience at the forum to support their growth as leaders. They engage in storytelling workshops, which will be demonstrated here today. And they just started these stories while they've been on site or been thinking about them a little bit before they traveled. They get introductions to early stage funders and their perspectives. They get networking advice and relationship building support and media training. As many of you know, while young people are often at the forefront of leading change in their communities, and we know what's happening right now in the United States and around the world, they are frequently excluded from the conversations and the decision-making process, which really just isn't fair, and sometimes it's because they're just not prepared. We try to address this gap by integrating the next generation of leaders into the global conversations while equipping them with the resources needed to succeed. And before I have the pleasure of introducing these remarkable people, I just realized I didn't introduce myself. My name is Sarah Borgman. I work at the Skoll Foundation. I'm the head of the Communities and Convening team, and we put together the Skoll World Forum, among other convenings around the globe. So the housekeeping notes I have are, please silence your cell phones. I know you all know the routine by now. However, if you want to take photos and hashtag SkollWF, please do so. And after this session, you will see little survey notes on the tables. Please do fill those out. We read every single one of them. In fact, I read every single one of them. So it would be great if you would. And now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our first speaker from water.org in India. In her role, she works with households to create access to water and sanitation services. Please welcome Bhuvana to the stage.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a nice introduction to me. Vanakkam and a warm greetings to you all. This is one of the great moments standing in front of you all, sharing experiences and learnings through my career. Let me take you all through a story of my first work experience with a desperate community, how the organization that I worked supported them, what were all the challenges faced by me as a manager, as a fresher to the job, and how we solved those problems. Having completed my post-graduation in agriculture, in fact, I was looking for a suitable job. In December 2004, southern part of India had just experienced a sorrowful natural calamity, claimed several thousands of lives and negatively impacting livelihoods of millions of people. I was privileged to be a volunteer serving those communities. Incidentally, that just led me to a job in an NGO which focused on the inclusive growth of the community through innovative funding mechanisms. So there were many NGOs working in the field doing the relief activities. And post-relief activities, very few NGOs stayed over there, supporting the community for livelihood activities through free fishing boats and fishing nets. The organization I worked focused on livelihood restoration through sustainable model called community banking. It was a challenging and interesting task to me as a team to make the people understand the sustainability model. So the organization I worked had previous experiences and they had a few nice strategies and everything. One of the best I should share my experience here is live and learn. I lived with the community. I went to the fisherman community. I stayed with them. I lived with them. I ate with them. I slept with them. It was amazing experience, I should say. In fact, it was difficult for me to accommodate them and live with them. I should accept that. But seeing them getting up on the every early morning, like 2 a.m., to go to the sea, to fish, to fill their stomach, that's really, no words to express that. The struggle faced by the community, day by day, it's not easy. It's not a single day problem to be solved. So based on my learnings, we designed model for them to help them improve their economic levels. So it took a while, and it had greater impacts. At last, we succeeded establishing sustainable community-based organizations. Though it took a time, it had greater impacts at later times, and it sustained as well. Let me quickly take you all through a challenges faced by me as a manager over there and being a fresher. Working in a post-disaster situation with huge damage, that too with a desperate community, with very limited time for training and sensitization, was a great challenge. And mobilizing the volunteers from the local community, as well as retaining those volunteers, added to the challenge. I was really helpless because people were focusing on so many post-relief activities, developing projects, and all these things. So how I addressed those challenges? Number one, I didn't innovate something new, but I explored myself and brought out an important success factor called self-initiative. I realized that I should not wait for someone to come and teach me. I just started on my own. I reached out to experienced colleagues across geographies to learn the concept, to learn the model, and to learn the best practices that suits local needs. That was the first time I realized the power of networking. That was amazing. And number two, I realized that I should get rid of the fear of sharing my problems. I lived in a world, if I share my problems, am I demonstrating my incapability? Later, I shed off from this world of perception, and I started sharing my problems with my fellow colleagues in the open meetings and brainstorm to get new ideas. So these are two important learnings that helped me to shape my career to reach me to the current position here. I used my technical skills on the community banking to establish savings and credit program for an NGO in an urban parts of the Dhaka city, Bangladesh. Later, I joined the team Water.org India, which innovates new ideas to create access to the water and sanitation facility to the households through affordable financing. There were many free and subsidized programs out there in our country. It was challenging to us as well, but we at Water.org continues accomplishing this through client-friendly loan products. Interestingly, because we at Water.org strongly believes in networking, learning from the partners, and innovation. And I'm really happy with what I am at Water.org because of my passion, the way we work, and mainly the inner satisfaction I get at the end of each day. I request you all that these three are important to take forward in your career. So I would like to thank Water.org and Skoll for having provided me such lovely platform to share my experience with best satisfaction, and extremely thankful to my parents, and big thank you to you all from a budding social entrepreneur, a happy mother,
Yes.
and a seeker of lovely life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Thank you.
And take a big breath.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you a question or two.
Sure, Sarah.
And then we're gonna let these folks ask you a question or two.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Do you remember your first big risk that you took when you shared your scare? That's what we call it at Skoll, when you share your scare. When you asked people for help, when you were nervous about doing that?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And that was my first job and first time as a manager. It was really a proud moment for me as well, because after studying, immediately I got into a manager position. So, but the risk behind the manager position is not easy. Like sharing and, I have to innovate. I have to demonstrate leadership to everyone. So that was really a risky moment sharing. But because I had a huge, fear, if I share my problems, people will think that I'm not knowing that. So I was a bit scared on that part. But later I realized that sharing will help me to learn. So the moment I started sharing my problems, my learning curve has just started growing. And that grew me well in community banking program as well.
What a great lesson for all of us. I'm sure we've all had that moment where we didn't want to share our problems, but in fact, it was the best thing that we ever did. So on a lighter note, you said that you spent time on these boats with the fishermen, fisherwomen. Did you ever get seasick? Did you have to spend the nights out there?
No, actually, I lived with the community. I lived with the community there in their huts. And I, in fact, took one ride in boat.
Okay.
That was hard. That was like, it's not easy.
No?
It's not a professional way of boating. It's just fishing.
Right.
So I have to hold the rope. They asked me to sit in the boat rough as such. And waters were coming from all the sides. My dresses got wet. I was like, oh, what's this? What's this like? So that's not, then I realized this is development sector. I should be like that. I should live like that. I should learn this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to let others ask some questions, and please wait for the microphone. There's a microphone. Is there any hands? Anybody would like to ask a question? Yeah, right there. Sure.
So I work with water.org in India, and I just wanted to say, Bhuvna, I'm so proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm feeling blessed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was a good note to end on. Now I'd like to introduce our second speaker, who founded Copper Rose in Zambia. Copper Rose works in the area of reproductive health and women's rights by breaking taboos that hold women and girls back from fully actualizing in any culture. The name Copper Rose is a representation for women in Zambia to be appreciated and treated as valuable assets, as copper is to the economy. Thank you for coming to the stage, Faith. We can't wait to hear from you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So last week, I was in Ndola. Ndola is a town in the central region of Zambia. It's about 450 kilometers away from Lusaka, where I'm based. And I was coming back from a training where I was training some healthcare providers on the new policy that the country has released on age of consent for adolescent sexual reproductive health. So I was on a bus, and midway through the journey, the bus stopped. We were told we'll have to wait a couple of hours until the mechanic would come and repair it. So I sat in my seat trying to find something to entertain myself, and I looked through the window. I saw a bird, and when I zoomed in, this bird was actually building a nest. The bird would go from the bush up into the tree, which is 50 meters high, and build this nest. An Australian author who writes a lot about birds says it takes about 1 to 2 days for a bird to complete building its nest. I was inspired by this because it made me think about what other nests are in our lives, in my life. If you look at your phone, there are so many apps that you use, so many social media platforms that we have now. I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg took 1 to 2 days, or however he would explain that, to build Facebook and other people also to build the apps that we use. This completely resonates with me. In 2015, I started Copper Rose Zambia. I was only 20 years old at the time, and I just wanted to make a difference in my community. Copper Rose works with young women and girls in the community to educate them about sexual reproductive health, advocate for family planning services and information for adolescents to help prevent pregnancies, teenage pregnancies. We're going into our 3rd year now, and I've managed to reach out to more than 15,000 young women and girls. Most of the times people ask me, okay, so what does Copper Rose even mean? Copper Rose is a symbolic name. Copper, I come from a country where copper contributes 76% to the gross GDP. And for us, this means so much. And just to make young women and girls believe that they are valuable and they are just as beautiful as a rose is at the core of my work. This year's forum theme is the power of proximity. And I would like to borrow what Brian Stevenson said in the opening plenary, that we need to be close enough to feel the hug. We need to be close to the marginalized people to understand the challenges that they face. I started Copper Rose on my university campus. I went to students, fellow students, collected door-to-door, went door-to-door to collect some donations just to be able to purchase sanitary napkins to help keep girls in school. I did this with the people who were around me. Now, as social entrepreneurs, young social entrepreneurs, the fear is usually how to start because we don't have the capital. Maybe we don't know the right people, or we think we don't know the right people. But using my story, I think the best place, and also using the forum theme, the best place is to start at the closest place, which is the nearest place that you are, in your community, in your town, in your province, in your country. And that's how I started Copper Rose. So proximity is an asset. Proximity is an asset for social entrepreneurs because it helps you, if you're selling a product, you sell it to your best friend, you try to sell it to your neighbors, you try to sell it to your friends at church, or just people who are around you, because they are usually the first people who will believe in your mission, who will believe in your goal, who will believe in that product that you're trying to market and sell. There's an African proverb that says, "Umwana ushinda, atasha ninokulia," which simply means somebody who doesn't move or travel will strongly believe that their mother's cooking is the best. On a lighter note, I think my mom's cooking is the best. But so the fact that you, in as much as proximity can be an asset, sometimes it can be limiting because we need to learn from experts and professionals who may not be proximate to us. Before I came to the Skoll Forum, I'll be honest with you, I thought that I had an incredible story. Not until I met these emerging leaders. When I came to the Skoll Forum, I met people who have dedicated their lives to empower and develop, use their expertise to empower and develop young people like myself and these emerging leaders. And for the last 5 days, I've been learning from these people. I've learned so much more than what I have learned in the last 3 years. So I would like to give them a round of applause. So what I'm trying to say is, even if you start with passion, and even if you have passion, to be honest, passion may not be enough. You need to learn from the experts. You need to learn from professionals. You need to learn from people who are doing the work that you're trying to do or have a similar goal with you. And for me, I don't even have a background in public health. I don't have a background I'm not an expert in a particular subject, but all I started with was passion. So this is what most social entrepreneurs have. Just a few days ago, I received an email saying I had been accepted for my master's degree at Michigan State University. I'm very excited. I would definitely love to go there. But unfortunately, a scholarship that I had applied to has recently withdrawn from funding students at the university. So this for me means, this entire story for me means that there's so many people so many young social entrepreneurs who are passionate, who are willing, who are committed to changing the narrative about Africa. And in order to close this distance and close the distance and proximity, all they need is knowledge, skills, and expertise. Lastly, I'd like to go back to the story of the bird and the nest. I'm very passionate about this nest. I love this nest. I love the work that I do. And I think about it every day. I plan for it every day, because I want to grow a nest so big that it fits 1 million women and girls. Because my personal mission is to reach out to 1 million women and girls in Zambia by 2021. And for as long as I continue to see women and girls underprivileged and disadvantaged in terms of education, sexual reproductive health services, you will see me there in the front lines, trying to use whatever resources I have, trying to use whatever skills and knowledge I have to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you. This is such a challenging topic globally. The taboos, the mystery around it. What kind of challenges have you faced, or what kind of resistance have you faced when starting Copper Rose or starting to scale Copper Rose?
There's so many challenges that I've faced, but one of the most outstanding ones is just being able to stand in front of people in the community and talk about a taboo subject. I remember vividly one time I was conducting a training on how to make reusable sanitary pads. Mm-hmm. I was having a session with people between the ages of 35 and 40, both male and female, because we're talking about, that was not the main subject, we're talking about the whole sexual reproductive health in general. Right. So I started addressing the issue of menstrual hygiene, and the women were like, no, don't say that, there's men in the room, let the men leave, and then we can continue this discussion. So some of those comments are the things that make me continue doing what I'm doing, because 60% of the women and over in the world are women. Women who are menstruating, have menstruated, or will menstruate. So why do we want to not talk about this important subject?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, absolutely. We have time for 1 or 2 questions for Faith. Any hands?
Hi, your work sounds amazing, Faith. I was curious, in the United States, President Trump has said that the United States will no longer give financial support to health groups in other countries that promote or perform abortions. Has this had any impact on your work, on your fundraising, on other groups in Zambia doing this work?
That's a good question, thank you. Well, yes, it does. It has affected our work and also other organizations in my country. But we're still, at the moment, currently, some of the projects that Copper Rose are running is funded by other government institutions. So there are still people who are willing to support and fund projects around abortions, access to contraceptive use for young people. And we're trying to leverage on the existing support at the moment, and also looking for other ways that we can fundraise, creating sustainable projects that can, continue the projects that we're already running. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for what you do, Faith. Our third speaker works for an organization called Breakthrough in India. Breakthrough is working to build a world in which all people live with dignity, equality, and respect. We'd love to hear your story. Thank you, Priyanka.
Hello, everyone. My name is Priyanka, and I come from New Delhi, India. And as Sarah said, I work for an organization called Breakthrough. And most of Breakthrough's work is going into the community, challenging gender norms around gender-based discrimination and violence against women and girls. To be honest, when I was asked to talk about my story, I was a little nervous because I did not get into the development sector by design. In my previous avatar, which wasn't very long ago, about 2.5 years ago, I was an advertising producer. So I used to make ad films for mainstream advertising, for cars, toothpaste, whatever you can think of. Anyway. I was in a part-time role at that time, and I was working from home because my daughter was very young. And about 2.5 years ago, I met this friend who used to work at Breakthrough, and we were just talking, and the organization was looking for someone to come and do some additional work for them. So I said, she said, why don't you go and talk to them and see if something comes out of it? And are you interested? Because I was already working somewhere else. I said, you know what, I'll go and have a chat. And I went in, and they gave me the work. It was just some freelance work at that time. And then in about 2 months' time, they offered me a full-time job in their media team. And that's what I do right now. I actually head the media team at Breakthrough, and my team is responsible for making all the communication, all the media products, whether it's films, it's radio, it's any kind of print, or any kind of IEC material that we then use in the community. So, and the reason I'm talking about this is because, as cliche as it may sound, I think looking back, that was the turning point in my life. And that is the truth, because Breakthrough was really my introduction to the world of social change. For those of you who were at the opening plenary the other day, hearing President Carter speak about India and the problem of disappearing girls. We work in a community in Haryana, which is actually one of the states with the lowest sex ratio in India, and it's, I think, last I checked, it was 834 girls to 1,000 boys. I want to share a story with you that is actually brought that statistic, or made that statistic real for me. So as part of my work, I go into the community a lot, because the way we work is that we go into the community, we try to talk to people and try to understand, because we don't want to come from a space of not understanding the culture or the requirements of the community. So as part of this whole, whole interaction, I was in Haryana in a school with another colleague, and we had a mobile van going on, and there were all these young boys and girls who were taking part in this exercise, and it was all fun and games. It was a really good day, and everything was going very well. And after the interaction and after the actual activity ended, me and my colleague just started talking to a group of young girls. And they were very young. They were like between the age of 9 to 10 years old, as old as my daughter is. And we were just asking each other, what is your name? I was telling them, and they were all very shy, mischievous, full of life, energy. It was fantastic. Anyhow, so there was this one girl, and after a lot of them kind of told me what their names were, there was this one girl, and I asked her in Hindi. I said, "Aapka naam kya hai?" Which means, what is your name? And she turned around to me and she said her name was Kafi. So I kind of thought about it. I was like, oh, that's a strange name, because Kafi in Hindi means enough. So I was like, oh, that's a strange name. But anyway, didn't really say anything about it at that time. Everything ended. And then once the children had gone away, my colleague turned to me, and she had been working in the community for a very long time. And she said, did you understand why she was named Kafi? And I said, no, I didn't. And actually, I wanted to ask you that question, that, I just thought it was a strange choice for a name. And she said, that's because in Haryana, a lot of families name their daughters Kafi, which is enough, Antim, which is the last one, Bateri, which is again colloquially enough in their language, and Sima, which means the border. So these are just some of the names that they use, symbolically just maybe sending a message out in the universe that they don't want any more girls. And it happens across. And that little girl, and I just felt so sad. I'm coming from a family of 3 sisters. I'm the eldest of 3 siblings, and, my parents have always been, really good to us in terms of coming from a middle-class family in India, having access to education and everything else that you do. So it was heartbreaking, and that experience kind of stayed with me for the next few days, and I was thinking about it, and I kind of felt, it was deeply unsettling, it was disturbing, but I also felt humble, and I kind of felt like, in some ways, I started checking my privilege, and I started thinking about all the times I'd fought with my parents for really stupid things, which really did not matter anymore, and I just felt like, there are so many girls out there who don't even have the right to have a name that means something more, that means something positive. And I think over the course of the next one and a half years, I've had many such interactions, but what I've understood is, why is it so important to do the work that we do? Why is it so important to go into the community and urge parents to actually value their girls and also show them some love? That's really what it is all about. It's, of course, about giving them a brighter future. It's about giving them access to opportunities around education, health, nutrition, not discriminating against them, but it's really about making them feel loved and not making them feel like they are supposed to be the last one in the line of not wanting to have any more girls. So that, I think, for me, when I look back, was one defining moment, because while it was just that one incident, it kind of changed or shifted something in my thinking. In my journey at Breakthrough, I've often thought about the contribution that I'm making, because the organization is making a huge contribution, and I know that. I mean, if I really start talking about Breakthrough's work, there's a lot to say. Having said that, I really started thinking about, okay, what is my own contribution? And I struggled with that a lot. Also coming from a space where I hadn't been in this sector, and I used to hear stories of all my colleagues and also the fantastic people here. In fact, the first day I came, I think I did talk about it, about how I kind of felt like, okay, I don't have that one profound story, or I don't have a real lived experience of why I'm doing the work that I do. And my journey only started when I actually joined this organization. So I used to struggle with this a lot, and I never really finding an answer. And then one day, during a team meeting, of all places, somebody narrated a story, and that was really something that stayed with me. And he said that, and I think it's a fictional story, but it's just a way of explaining something. And I call it the starfish story. And what he said was that, there was one day, a lot of starfishes washed up upon some shore. And there was this one man who walked to the shore, and he started picking one starfish at a time and putting it back into the ocean. And there was this young boy who was sitting in a corner, and he was kind of watching this man thinking, I don't know what he's doing. So he walked up to him and he said, you know what? There are so many starfishes, and if you keep throwing just one back at a time, how are you going to save the lives of all of these? And the man just turned around and said, you know what? I have made a difference to that one starfish's life. I have saved the life of that one starfish. And in a strange way, I found that extremely powerful. And I think what I understood was that sometimes in the work that we do, we get very caught up in numbers. We get very caught up in, what is the impact we are having? And because the magnitude of the problem is such, and also there is that much to do. But I think when we're talking about closing the distance, if we can just remember that if my work or doing what I am contributes to a larger picture in some way and makes a difference to somebody's life somewhere, that's really what counts, because it really matters, and that really is enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I am sure you've been following the empowerment of women globally with the Me Too movement.
Yes.
I'm curious if that has changed any attitudes with people you've been working with, or as you chip away at this challenge, or as you throw one more starfish into the ocean.
It's a great question. I think we get asked this question a lot, being in media and primarily working on digital. And I have to say that I think the difference has been made in making the movement more visible. In the work that we do, a lot of Me Too's were already happening in the community. But it's just the fact that, and we were part of the whole piece as well. We've got a very strong digital presence, so we've been talking about it. We've also taken it now to what now and moving forward, why now and all of those things. But what I really wanted to say was that, for us, when we're talking about whether it's made a difference, yes, it's made a difference, because it's just it's magnified how large the problem is, and it's made it visible. And also the fact that mostly in urban communities, I think the impact is a little more direct in communities, because in India, a lot of people don't have access to digital technology, and a lot of areas that we work in, women don't even have access to a mobile phone, let alone having a Facebook account or coming in there. And so, in fact, imagine, we've had this global movement with so many women coming out and talking about them having been a part of Me Too, but there are so many out there who haven't even been able to say it. So I think on the ground, the impact is a little more indirect, but I think digitally and in the urban communities, we have seen an impact in the sense that people are talking about it a lot more. There are stronger conversations, and there is this strong strong force to actually make something happen. And where, in fact, yesterday I was at the panel and somebody said, it's not a movement. Yes, we call it the Me Too movement, but it's actually the movement that has risen from it is really where the actual impact is. So yeah, in that sense, in the urban spaces, we have seen a lot of more, I think it's just rejuvenated energy in wanting to fight this. Yeah.
Let's hope the energy moves to the more rural
So
spaces.
I really do hope so.
We have a question for you, Priyanka.
Of course.
Thank you very much, Priyanka, for the good work you're doing in India. And it is really heartbreaking for the story of these young girls being given those kind of names. I am curious whether you have conducted research to know when they are grown up, how do these names affect them? And what are you going to do to help them reconcile the psychological effects?
So I'm sure there is a lot of research available. We at Breakthrough haven't primarily conducted research like that, but we've worked with a lot of girls who then have become adolescents, and then when we work with them in the community, it has a detrimental effect for sure. But more than that, it's also understanding that in a lot of these cultures, these names are normalized. So it actually starts with the girls first not even realizing, because the girl that I met, she didn't think there was anything wrong with it, you know. She just knew her name was Kafi. So a lot of our work is actually around first trying to speak to the girls and making them, you know, just understand that this is not normal, and then working with them to see if in one-on-one peer-to-peer interactions or interactions with our trainers, we can find a way to resolve. But we're not an organization that works on psychological or mental health issues, so we're very mindful about not going out there and claiming something that is something that we are not experts at. Well, what we try to do is we try to then find peer groups in the community, we try to create a support systems, and then trying to understand what are the different things that we can do. We try to connect these girls to some of these spaces. A big part of our work is around creating safer spaces for adolescents in the community. And the safer spaces concept is really about having a space where they can go and talk about things that they are feeling without feeling stigmatized or feeling any kind of burden of not being able to say what they want to. And a lot of those things do come out, and when our community teams do come back and talk to us in the office in Delhi, it is a challenge though. It is very, very difficult, because sometimes it's also difficult to even understand the level of internalizing that happens. So.
Right.
So I hope I've answered your question, but we do try, in whatever is in our capacity, to try and work with them to see what is it that we can do. Yeah.
Have them own their own names in a new way. Yeah. Thank you so much, Priyanka. Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Yes. We have to move along with our program, but I promise you they will all stay in this room afterwards. So please keep your questions and come talk to them after. Now I'd like to introduce our fourth speaker, Joe Miller from the Marine Stewardship Council from right here in the UK. Marine Stewardship Council protects the oceans and safeguards seafood and supplies for the future through safe certification processes, among other strategies. Many of you might have seen the MSC logo either on restaurant menus or on packaging for seafood. I know I see it in the US. So let's give a warm welcome to Joe Miller.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'm head of PR at the Marine Stewardship Council. I've worked in communications and public relations for my whole career, primarily working with organisations trying to protect our environment and drive behaviour change towards people doing more to preserve the beautiful world that we live in. I want to start by telling you a little story about my 30th birthday, which was before I worked at the MSC. I was lucky enough to spend this special day on beautiful island in southern Cambodia. It's honestly one of the most magical places that I've ever been. In the morning, my now husband and I went diving, and in the shallows around the island we saw beautiful coral, millions of colourful fish, but we were very saddened to see that as we went further out into the ocean, a lot of the coral had been destroyed, it was broken and dead, and we were told later that that was because dynamite fishing used to be practised in that area and the reef still hadn't recovered. At lunchtime, for a special treat. We decided to go to a beach restaurant, just really a table on the beach, which was run by a local fisherman. And we'd seen some fellow travellers there a few days before eating what looked like amazing spider crab, like massive. And we thought that would be a good birthday treat. So we sat down and we asked for a crab. And the fisherman looked at us with delight and said, "You're in luck. I have only one crab today, and you're the first people here, so it's yours." He then said, "If you'd come yesterday, we wouldn't have had any crab, and we didn't catch any the day before either. And in fact, there's a lot fewer crab that we're catching now than we ever used to." And we enjoyed that crab. It was delicious, with a slight sense of guilt. Was the fact that he was catching less crab a result of the destruction that we'd seen, or perhaps the fact that more tourists were coming to the area? So fast forward 2 years, I found myself in an interview for the Marine Stewardship Council. And one of the questions that I was asked was, what do you think the challenges are of protecting our oceans and ensuring sustainable fishing? And I went straight back to that remote place and had a huge sense of empathy for that fisherman who was providing for his family, making the most of the opportunities that tourism was bringing, but also a sense of sadness for what we'd seen happening in the beautiful environment that they were so, should be so treasured. And I gave an answer about education and economics and development. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it must have been good because I got the job. And then ever since then, so the last 3 or 4 years, I have just learnt so much about the world of seafood and oceans that, I never dreamed even existed before I got that job. The challenge of protecting our oceans is enormous. Oceans cover 70% of the Earth's surface. We rely on them, everyone relies on them, for the oxygen that we breathe. Every second breath we take, the oxygen comes from the ocean. They regulate our climate, and they provide protein to billions of people. About 1 billion people rely on seafood as their primary source of protein, and the majority of them are in developing countries. It's also an incredibly source of livelihood in communities. More than 200 million people are employed directly in fishing. And by the nature of fish, they're global. They don't observe jurisdictions or governments. In fact, species like tuna might swim across 30 different government jurisdictions. So tackling this problem needs to be done at a global scale. Today, according to the UN, about a third of all fish stocks are overfished. 60% are at their maximum sustainable limits, and both of those numbers are increasing. So as our population grows and demand for seafood increases, that pressure on our ocean is just getting bigger and bigger. So I work in a global organisation, and the solution that the MSC provides and how it's trying to bridge the distance between this infinitely global problem and what on your plate when you're eating it seems so simple. I don't think most consumers would ever imagine where their fish came from, that it might, a fish caught in Alaska quite possibly travelled to China to be processed and then back to your plate. Fish is incidentally the most globally traded commodity, more than coffee or sugar. So the MSC tries to work with the industry and create a tool and a mechanism to drive change and bring people together and close the distance between this insurmountable challenge and our everyday purchases. 20 years ago, when the MSC was created through a partnership with WWF, a big NGO, and Unilever, then one of the owners of one of the biggest seafood brands in the world, they wanted to bring together disparate voices in order to create a single point around which communities could collaborate. So the Marine Stewardship Council's Sustainable Fishing Standard was created in consultation with scientists, NGOs, industry experts, fisheries managers, to try and give a definition of sustainable fishing, which incidentally is very hotly debated and constantly evolving because science and innovation and conservation constantly change. But what it means is that a responsible fishing organisation can choose to be independently assessed to a standard to determine whether or not it's sustainable. Retailers, chefs, brands, like the ones you might have seen the label on, can then choose to put that label on their packaging to say that their fish has come from a responsible fisher. And as more consumers recognise that label, so the cycle continues, the incentive for more fishing organisations, governments, policymakers to invest in their communities and fishing operations increases, and hopefully there's more sustainable fish. Now, the MSC has done a huge amount of work in the last 20 years. About 12% of all wild-caught fish is now eligible to carry that label, but there's still an incredible amount to do. And that's where I feel that I can add value through my work in PR and communications. There's been a lot of talk about storytelling at this conference. And what I try to do with my colleagues is tell the story behind that blue logo. So I've been very fortunate at the MSc to travel to places as far as South Africa, to Iceland, where I've met fishermen who are incredibly proud of what they're doing to preserve the environment, avoiding fishing sensitive habitats. And I want to tell those stories. And we have so many tools now with which to do that. Social media, digital platforms, traditional media are transforming the way that we can get that message out. Working with ambassadors and influencers like chefs and brands and celebrity surfers as well. So the message that I want to leave with you all today is, yes, the challenges are enormous, but the tools that we have and the energy behind correcting some of those is also enormous as well. So I feel positive for the future, and that's what keeps me motivated in my job.
Thank you, Jo. So what you might not know is Jo is also a brand new mother. And I think just came back from maternity leave, so...
I'm still on maternity leave.
So we're just going to give her another round of applause.
Should give a round of applause to my parents for looking after my baby. They've had a hard job.
Are there questions for Jo from the audience?
Christine from Armenia. I'm doing TEDx Yerevan and a number of other things related to development sector. Mostly coaching leaders in development sector to craft ideas, new projects. So I'm really curious, what's the added value of emerging leaders initiative for you as a development sector worker? And PR and communication is really important because development sector is really failing on telling their stories. That's a major gap we have, and we need to do something about it. So if you could share, and if you could also, from your perspective, advise what type of development sector workers should try to reach out to the program and tell what they need and how they can get involved. Yeah. Thank you.
So the Emerging Leaders Programme has been fantastic, I think, for all of us in helping us to tell our stories. We've had media training, we've been videoed, we've been interviewed, so we've had lots of practice, and I think we'd all agree that we've probably changed our stories as a result. Working in a scientific organisation, we really struggle to tell stories about what the MSc does. It's incredibly technical, and you can get lost in jargon very easily. And I think what's coming out of this forum and everything we've been doing is you need to look for those real-life examples and personal experiences. Regarding who should who could join the Emerging Leaders Programme. I don't see that, I don't think there's any barriers. You just got to look at the group here to see how diverse it is, and everybody's got a story to tell. You just need to find it, I think.
Thank you, Jo. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And a reminder, they will be here after the session ends. Now I'd like to introduce our next storyteller. Doreen comes from 1 Acre Fund in Uganda. 1 Acre provides smallholder farmers with asset-based financing and market facilitation to reduce post-harvest losses and optimize fair market prices. Let's welcome Doreen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. I grew up in a small, idyllic mining village on the backdrop of the Rwenzori Mountains on the borders of Uganda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. My childhood was perfect. I grew up in a very prosperous mining town. But when I was in the 1st grade, there was a rebel invasion from the Allied Defense Forces from the Congo that forever destroyed the fabric of my small town and introduced me to the concept of international development and foreign aid. I got to see at a very young age what happens when foreign aid, well-meaning foreign aid, is executed poorly. There was an influx of food and clothes, you name it, the usual. But no one really asked anyone in my town what they needed to rebuild the fabric of the town. We needed the mine to function. We didn't need clothes, we didn't need food. So tens and thousands of dollars were spent, and up to this day, Kilembe has actually never really recovered. So when I joined university, I said, I am going to join the development sector, but I am going to do it right. After all, I have first-hand experience of how this works, and I also know how not to do it. So I signed up for service, and I was posted to one of the most isolated Quechua Mayan communities on the borders of Belize and Guatemala. My experience was phenomenal. I had great impact on paper. I worked directly with women in the community to develop programs for women. We started a softball team for Mayan communities in a village where I was told that Mayan women are not allowed to play sports. We developed projects for young girls to help them raise livestock to pay for high school instead of getting married at the age of 14. I can go on and on and on. But I want to share one story that has really grounded my work and to me resonates with this idea of proximity. One day when we were at the school, I used to work directly with a nurse and the community health worker. I walked into the 3rd grade class and met a 10-year-old. Out of respect to her family, I'm going to change her name and call her Jane. When I walked into the classroom, I saw this girl and I thought that I had seen a real-life ghost. Her face was white, her lips were blue, and her fingers were purple. I was shocked, so I ran back to the community health worker. We were distributing vitamin supplements, vitamins for the Americans. I went back to the community health worker. I told her, I was like, do you know? And she's like, you just met Jane. I was like, yes, this girl appears in 3 colors. No 10-year-old girl should appear in 3 colors. She's like, yes, I know. She's been like that for the last 10 years. But I felt compelled to do something about it. So I went and I met her family. And in speaking to her, her mother told me that they thought she had something, which in Mayan culture we call awas. It's a concept that's very difficult to explain. The concept is if a pregnant woman sees something unusual during her pregnancy, that thing can pass on a deformity to the child. But it's not defined what that thing could be. So it could be anything. It could be a woman innocently walking around the village who sees a goat giving birth. And the only way the bush doctors, the local doctors, we call them Ilonels, the only way the Ilonel can actually treat this is the mother has to remember exactly what it is that they saw, and the bush doctor has to take a piece of it, burn it, and the patient has to inhale the fumes. So for 10 years, poor Jane's mother had been trying to remember exactly what it is that she had seen, and she couldn't. I'm not a mother, but I can't imagine the pain that she must have felt. So I felt that, Western educated, there must be a scientific explanation, there must be a medical explanation for this girl's illness. So I reached out to medical NGOs, to the mobile clinics that were coming through my village, even to the medical missionaries who I used to despise. And Jane was treated for everything and anything, bronchitis, pneumonia, asthma, and still she remained white, purple, and blue. And every time I met her, it always felt like she was going to breathe her last. So I was like, maybe she'll be fine after all. She's been like this for 10 years. So during this time, her grandfather, Jane's grandfather, got tuberculosis, and the community health worker and I were responsible for visiting him every day to make sure that he was taking his medication. We were checking his vitals and also doing health education for the family. So in one of these visits, the nurse sees Jane playing outside with her friends, and she came back in. She's like, Doreen. I was like, I know, you just met Jane. She's like, yeah, she's 10 years old, and she's purple, blue, and white. I was like, yes, I know, but that's her. She's like, no, it feels like she's going to stop breathing. I was like, yes, it feels like that, but she's not going to stop breathing. So the nurse said, we have to do something about it. And so we asked the family to allow us to take blood samples. That was on a Monday. And the nurse asked that the family take Jane to the hospital the following Wednesday. Jane was taken to the hospital, but she never came back. She died. When she died, right before she died, I went on vacation. I'd put in a lot of work, and I'd gone to celebrate my wins and the grants that were coming in. When I came back, my aunt called me. She said, Doreen, we just lost a little girl. And instantly, I knew exactly who she was talking about. And it broke my heart. So I bought a few things from the store as per Mayan culture. I went to visit the house, but on my way, the village chairman called me. He said, Doreen, I heard that you, the health worker, and the nurse killed the little girl. I mean, you can imagine my shock. I was like, what are you talking about? I was not in the village. I mean, I was not even in the country. How can you hold me responsible for the death of this young girl? I continued on to the family's home. It was the most uncomfortable and the most painful experience of my life. You cannot argue with someone's grief and their pain. And so I sat through, I listened to what the family had to say. I listened to the mother trying to call the husband to figure out where they would get $500 to bring the body back to the village. For context, my community was so isolated that up until 10 years ago, there was no road. So people had to hike 8 hours through the thick Mayan jungle to get to the closest village, where they would take a bus for another 3 hours to get to the nearest town or hospital or police station. So we got a road, but it was 3 hours. We were, on a good day in dry season, we're 3 hours away from town. And in rainy season, we were 3 to 8 hours, so sometimes we actually couldn't get out of the village. So I sat through that experience. I went home. Quite honestly, I cried a lot. It is a huge allegation to be held responsible for something like that. But I also had to be very introspective and think about what role I could have actually played in this girl's death. After all, she had survived for 10 years. The truth of the matter is, scientifically, I knew I was not responsible. What they found out when they went to pick up her results is that Jane had been living with acute tuberculosis for 10 years. No one survives with acute tuberculosis for that long. It's a miracle in of itself. And it had actually traveled up to the brain by the time they found it. So yes, on paper, Western educated, I knew I was not responsible. Her disease had a name, her disease had a treatment. But at the same time, if people don't survive for 10 years with acute tuberculosis, how did this girl manage to survive for 10 years? It forced me to ask myself, is there some kind of truth, even the smallest amount of truth to this crazy Mayan tradition? And this story has shaped my work in the way I think about development. In that even the most well-intentioned of us who think that we have gotten it right, that we know how to do this, sometimes we forget that we have to close the gap between our own personal biases, the cultures of the people that we're trying to support, and the interventions that we're trying to build for them. Today I work for an organization called One Acre Fund. We work in East Africa, and I was very intentional in choosing which institution I would work for. I chose to work with One Acre Fund because I strongly do believe that at the heart of the organization cares about only building programs that have proven impactful for the clients that we're trying to serve. But to anyone here in the development sector, I urge you to listen. And it sounds so simple and so small, but it's so easy to get it wrong. Thank you.
Wow. What a difficult story to tell us. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I don't think anyone's going to forget your words here today. Thank you.
Thank you for the platform.
Any questions for Doreen? Or are we all just so deeply in thought about her experience?
I wonder, did the family blame you as well?
Should I just respond?
Sure. I just want to know if the family also blamed you for this death?
It was a transition. I think initially when this happened, they didn't really understand, and what the hospital didn't do very well was explain to them exactly what tuberculosis was. That
Tuberculosis.
happened, tuberculosis. That happened after the fact. So there was a lot of Mayans had never really interacted with the formal medical system, and that's how they were treated when they went to the hospital. They were given medication, but no one really invested time in explaining to them what their illnesses were and why they were being treated a certain way. So we did a lot of health education after both Jane and her grandfather's death, and I think the family came around. But initially, yes, they did hold us responsible, and I think it's fair. I mean, my community got a community health worker for the very first time in 2013 when I got there, and we are the people who connected them to the hospitals and to doctors. So when they thought about formal medication of the formal health sector, they thought about me and the community health worker, and we were the only people present in the community. So I felt that it was fair that that blame was being put on the people who had introduced them to the system.
Thank you so much, Doreen.
Thank you.
Our final speaker is from Kenya and is the co-founder of a social venture revolutionizing tea farming in Kenya. Please welcome to the stage, Kevin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin. As they have said, I was brought up in Western Kenya. And let's talk the language of technology, agriculture, innovation, and what it can do for us and our people. So my story begins when I was living in Western Kenya, because we do farming a lot. That's the backbone of our economy in Kenya. And sometimes we look at how our people goes through the whole work of trying to put food on our table, but sometimes they don't get the maximum benefit of what they are doing. So I know all of us love tea. We hate tea in the morning, mostly. And tea mostly is what I focus on, and I want to see people benefiting a lot from this kind of production. So I grew up seeing farmers coming out and going to their farms early in the morning, sometimes raining or as cold as this in Kenya. And they will pick their tea and move along, going to the factories or the tea centers to give out what they've produced in the hope of they're going to get all the benefit that they're working for. But sometimes the handling process and everything doesn't really give them what they need. And a few factors come in, like inefficiencies in time management, lack of will from the factories to come on time and help them, and sometimes bad roads, as we have bad roads in Africa and everywhere else we know. And this really concerns me as being a person in technology, even though I'm not a tea farmer myself. But recently, Brian Stevenson said, we have to get uncomfortable with things that even don't matter to us. And that gave me a reason as to why I should go to this kind of story and try to bring out something that can help them. So last year, I was in a conference, and they asked us, can you do some kind of a venture or an idea that can help people? My friend John and I sat down on a table, and we said, let's think about this process. The value chain, the supply chain. Do they get what they need? If not, what can we do? So I looked at how the tea is grown, the process from the land, from the farm, all the way to the factory. And then along the way, we realized there's so many things that happen, and loss of tea happens there. So if it's myself or my parent that collects 40 kilograms of tea, and by the time they're going to the factory, it's only 20 that they're going to reach there, a loss of 20 kg. That's a lot of money. If that happens, we are actually creating more poverty by ourselves. But in this age and time, I will be uncomfortable to contribute to poverty, as I know most of you will not do that. We want to create economic, efficient people, and not poverty, not poor people. So I'll not sit down and look at people losing what they can have. So then I said, John, let's do this. And that was the birth of Ukulima Halisi, the mobile phone app that can actually connect the farmers and the tea factories by simply making them be on path. Communication, because lack of communication in every process breaks down everything. So we said we're going to do a very, very simple application that will enable farmers to dial some numbers. That's the way you do your top-ups. And then they communicate to the factory. They're given schedules, they're given notifications, and they're told, come this day or come that day, or bring your tea or not, don't bring it today. And with this kind of process, they'll end up not losing anything along the way. And by not losing tea, it means they'll have some more money or some more funds to go back and attend to their healthcare, attend to their education, live a dignified life because they'll have some money with them. So sometimes people ask me, like, why do you do that? But I said, before I said, even though I'm not a tea farmer, but I don't want to be part of people who contribute to poverty. I want to enable people to live a dignified life by reaping benefit from what they're doing. Farmers really feed us a lot. Someone said yesterday from my agro venture that people who give us food on the table should not go hungry by themselves. And farmers who give us tea, that I'm sure this morning most of us consumed it, should not go hungry. As you take that tea today, make sure that the people who have brought it to the table are also feeding. And that is the all mission for Ukulima Halisi. We want all the farmers to get back their money as they do their farming in the land so that they can get maximum benefit, they can live a dignified life. As we know, farmers are also human beings, and human beings have to live a dignified life. That's the whole concept of Ukulima Halisi, and we are here, only 6 months old in the process, but I'm very much happy because it's changing lives. We're making people get maximum benefit. And by doing this, we're enabling lives, we're enabling communities, and now I can walk in my community and people can say, yes, you came with this idea that's actually changing our lives. And this is the whole purpose of proximity, closing the distance. Even if I do one thing, just one thing of closing the distance between the factory and the people, that will make me joyful. We have to work this as leaders. We have to be empathetic. We have to show love and compassion about our people. And if, and only if, we can do that and go back to the communities, look at the small problems that are there, and come with very, very simple solutions. Bottom-up approach, human-centered approach. That's where the life is going to change and Africa is going to go ahead. This should only change in Africa, but around the world, everyone in India, in America, in Asia, we all have to live to our people. And it begins with us, me and you, what we can do in our all simple ways. Let's use our skills, let's use our expertise, our time, and the little we have to change the communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. You hold on to that. Hold on. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. A theme in your talk was about not contributing to poverty. Where do you get your core values from? Where did you find that piece of core value that you wanted to actually be a part of the change?
I grew up not having anything because I'm part of a person who didn't see much. My parents didn't have anything. In fact, didn't even have parents at all, because growing up around people who are helping you and growing up having nothing really gives you a meaning of understanding what others are going through. If I have nothing and they have something, when someone doesn't have something, I know what it means. And sometimes we give not because we have so much, but we give because we know what it means to lack nothing.
Right.
And this really gives me the value of going back and see, if I can only give a smile to a face of someone anywhere and someone to give him life, because most of our people, when they're in poverty, they lose even meaning of life. They lose hope. It's like the world is against us. But if we go and try to raise their hand one by one, we give them life. So my core thing is about, I want to see people who are happy. People who have something on the table. People who can feel part of us. We are all part of the world. We should all be happy.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Do we have a question or two for Kevin? Or just a smile as he just.
Hi, Kevin. That was great. Thank you. I didn't really understand why you were saying that they started off with 40 kilograms of tea and might end up with 20. So how did they lose it along the way, and how did your communications app help relieve that?
So what happens after collecting the tea from their land? They have to bike them all the way to the collection centers. And along the way, maybe long journeys, and they get there, and then there's no lorry from the factory to pick it, or there's no one from the the other end of the factory to come and tell them, okay, you are here, let's sort your tea, let's get it back to the factory. So what happened is that tea is very highly perishable product, as we know that. A few hours after plucking
Perishable,
yes,
perishable,
very perishable
very
product.
perishable.
A few hours after taking it, it will go bad. And if it goes bad, it's a loss to the farmer. And a loss of the farmer is a loss of money. And loss of money means poverty. So we want to reduce the timing by making this as efficient as possible. Reduce time by the time it is picked from the land and the time it goes to the factory. So by doing this, we'll make sure that all the tea that has been picked actually goes into the process. And it's going to the process, that means the farmer will get maximum benefit.
Are there other questions for Kevin? She's a curious one.
Well, yes, I've been in development sector for a while, so I'm also concerned. This is a question not exactly to Kevin, but rather to SkollWF Forum and Foundation. We really need a revolution in the field of, I would guess, overall leadership in terms of development sector. And I wonder how we turn all those amazing insights from these local experiences, which have tremendous wisdom and can secure more impact than anything else, into some institutionalized channels, processes, technologies. I would ask really humbly if you could do something on that, and because if big foundations or organizations or corporations won't do this, we have no one to work to lobby for us on that. Thank you for this session.
True. We are a small piece of a much larger puzzle, and our contribution is heartfelt but modest, and we do bring, we source and we bring emerging leaders. We have a new program called the Forum Fellows that we have underwritten to come from around the globe, so those local stories can be heard, so that we can give them a platform for their voices, so that we can understand in proximation with each other what it is that can be helpful. We could certainly be doing more. I think everyone could certainly be doing more, but thank you for bringing that up. And I think being in proximation with each other and bringing folks together where they can learn from one another and they can teach us. They can really teach us what it's like in their villages and how we can actually be of true help, like Doreen talked about. Well, at this point, I'd like to invite all of the emerging leaders up on stage so that we can give them a large round of applause. And if you want to take photos and tweet them out, you are more than welcome to. These are amazing people. This is the 2018 class of emerging leaders from the Skoll World Forum. Woo! Thank you for all of your hard work. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. We'll be taking them back to our homes as well. Thank you. Thank you.